Okay, we're going to pick up with the Age of Exploration, the encounter, the whole Columbian exchange piece, by talking about the European colonies in Latin America and how they managed those. Okay, so kind of to review, late 1400s, Spain and Portugal seeking ocean route to Asia. Columbus sails across, lands in the Caribbean islands, what is the Bahamas, thinks he's in East Indies, thinks he's out in Indonesia and places like that, and he calls the people Indians. The name sticks. Portugal also wants a part of the New World, and pretty much at this point in time, Spain and Portugal are at the verge of war over who controls what part. So the Pope steps in, and in the treaty of what is known as the Treaty of Tortosius, he draws a line of demarcation that ran through the north to south in the Atlantic Ocean. Approximately 1,100 miles west of the Azores off the coast of North Africa, Spain was given lands to the west of the line. Portugal gets everything to the east. Portugal receives what is now modern-day Brazil. Spain receives the rest of Latin America. So nice of the Pope just to decide all this, even when there were already people there who weren't subjects of either Portugal or Spain. So this is the reason why I've said it before. Brazil speaks Portuguese, and the rest of Latin America, south of the Rio Grande, speaks predominantly Spanish or native dialects combined with Spanish. Okay, so here's a map of the Treaty of Tortosius. Okay, originally, the first, just this little tip of South America is owned by the Portuguese. Gradually moves it to the west and gives Portugal control of what is modern-day Brazil. They also get all of Africa and Asia. Okay, by the mid-1500s, Spain had built a pretty large empire in Latin America, spread from Mexico down to Peru, and we've been talking about the Aztecs and Incas in class. This will kind of just give you the overview of how this is going. The King of Spain divides his empire into two kingdoms. There's New Spain, which has its capital at modern-day Mexico City, Peru, which has its capital at modern-day Lima, Peru. Each kingdom is ruled by a viceroy or a governor. Wealthy landowners called cabildos govern the towns. Spain believed in mercantilism. You should be familiar with mercantilism because it's the British system also of managing their colonies. You're going to need to know this one on the final exam. Mercantilism is the belief that colonies exist simply to make the mother country rich. Mercantilists want the mother country to export more than they import, because if you sell more than you buy, you make more money. So under this system, the colonies provide the mother country with raw materials, and other countries sell finished goods back to the colonies. So it's a profit maximizing situation. Raw materials usually cost less than the finished product. The sugar costs less than the rum. Okay, the iron costs less than the swords or the guns or the cannon. The trees cost less than the furniture and the ships and everything else. Okay, so at first, gold from the Aztecs and Incas is melted down into bars and shipped to Spain, and a whole lot of it ends up at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean Sea, and the Atlantic due to piracy and other things. Soon, Spain sets up a plantation system, though, and they begin to produce cash crops such as coffee, sugarcane, and bananas. They set up ranches for leather and wool because they start raising cattle and horses and other animals, sheep. Okay, Spain also sets up what becomes known as the encomienda system. This system gives Spanish settlers control over land and its people. The Native Americans were mistreated and they're used as slaves. Okay, so the encomienda system reduces local authority, gives control to the central government. You have a chart of how it worked. Okay, supposedly the Spanish were going to protect and Christianize the Indians. Instead, they turned them into slaves. They wanted a labor force. The Indians died of disease, and eventually these abuses lead to the importation of Africans. Okay, Europe's discovery of the Americans lead to an exchange of goods and people known as the Columbian exchange. We've been through this pretty well. We know the items that go to Europe and the ones that come back to the Americas. Most significantly are diseases. Okay. Spanish colonies develop, a class system sets up. You had the highest class, which are the peninsulares, who are the Spanish-born officials sent to the colonies. They include the viceroys, the government officials. They control the economy, and they have political power. Next are the Creoles. These are the American-born descendants of Spanish settlers. Still pure-blood Spanish, but they're the people that are born in the colonies. They're educated, they're wealthy, but they don't have as much power and clout as the peninsulares. Then you have the mestizos, mixes of European and Native American descent. These are more your middle-class people, shop owners, artisans, farmers, or mine overseers. Native Americans work on the haciendas, and they kept their own languages, lived in villages. Eventually, they converted to Catholicism. Free blacks, who brought their religion, brought their freedom with them, they work in many trades, and then you have the slaves, obviously at the bottom, working on the plantations and mines, and they are property, and they can marry, they can own their own land, and they can eventually buy their own freedom. Okay, so just a simple chart of how that class system works. Obviously, few peninsulares with all the power and wealth on the top, and lots of labor on the bottom without very much. Okay. Roman Catholic Church plays a huge part in Latin America, even to today. The current Pope is from Buenos Aires. Okay, he's an Argentinian. Was a unifying force. Helped protect the Native Americans. The priests often protect the Native Americans from the abuses of the Spanish landowners. They absorb many of the Native American customs. Controls the most land in Latin America, just like it does in Europe. They also control education, hospitals, and services for the poor. So what's everyday life like? Well, patriarchal, a father-dominated society. Women are expected to obey the head male of the household. They have little rights, little education. There are arranged marriages. You married who you're told to. Most of the wealth relies in the cities. Church is the center of life. The country haciendas are much like the old plantations of the southeast. Self-contained villages, much like the manor economy of your early Europe during the Middle Ages. Some even have chapels and priests. Many people never leave the hacienda. Maroon colonies, which are escaped slaves, people that are a combination slave, African and Native American, and they form colonies on Caribbean islands like Jamaica. Eventually, they established the first revolution after the American Revolution on Haiti in the Dominican Republic, and they make an African American ruled country. Okay, Bartolome de las Casas is a very famous author of this time period. He's a priest, and he exposes all the abuses of this encomienda system, forcing the Spanish to reform the system and end Native American slavery. Unfortunately, his efforts come too late, and many millions of Native Americans die from disease and mistreatment. This begins the advent of the African slave trade. They're more desirable because many of them are skilled farmers, and they also have resistance to the European diseases because they've been exposed to them for longer. Slaves work on these large plantations that we've talked about. Portuguese also begin to practice mercantilism in Brazil, and they create their own plantation system, growing sugarcane, cotton, and coffee. In the 1690s, they discover gold and diamonds in the mountains of Brazil, up close to the Andes, and another system sets up. Okay, here's the slave trade, where they went to, and the areas of domination, and the origins of Africans in North America and South America. Okay, so you're going to take the quiz online. You have needed to take notes and the embedded questions within the video.